It's early summer down here in Zone 8B in South Georgia, and this is the time of year when we'll start turning over some of our vegetable plots that we planted in early spring. We'll be getting those crops out of there, and we'll be coming behind there and planting either maybe a whole plot of flowers, maybe a warm season cover crop, or in some instances, some more vegetables. So I thought it would be a great day to do a video on crop debris and crop debris removal or leaving it in the garden. So which crops or crop families do you want to leave in the garden, maybe till into the soil to help add to your organic matter? And which of those crop families do you want to get as far away from that garden plot as possible? So we're going to use this plot here as our prime example. So this was the first plot of warm season crops that I planted this spring. It's also going to be the first plot that gets turned over. Now on the ends here, we can see something's been ripped up there. That's where we had some slicing cucumbers. We also had some on the other end there. And then in the middle here, we've got about 4 rows of squash, all different kind, patty pan, zucchini, straight neck, and crook neck squash. And these guys have been doing really well for us, but it's getting to be that time where we need to get them out of here. Now, not all of these squash plants have started to decline in production, but some of them have. And you can see some yellowing in there. We've got some mildew going on in here. Haven't had a ton of squash bug pressure yet because we've been spraying them pretty good, but starting to see some squash bug eggs out here and stuff. And so even though this plot is still producing okay, I just feel like it's getting to be that time where we need to get these guys out of here. Otherwise, we're just providing a breeding ground for insects and fungus and stuff. It's funny, I told my wife yesterday that I was gonna pull up all these squash here, and she said, no, wait, let me harvest them one more time. She's been my squash harvesting helper this spring, been a big help. And she's been coming out here every other afternoon and picking all these squash and cucumbers here. So she said she wanted to pick them one more time before I pulled them up. So I'm glad I kind of saved them so I could show you guys today. And then in the next day or two, after she picks them one more time, we'll get them out of here. So I showed you how those squash had a little bit of disease on them and stuff. These cucumbers here that I pulled up, so I pulled up 2 rows. I showed you the earlier bundle before. Really wasn't nothing wrong with them. I mean, they were looking good. They were still producing pretty good. Some of the fruits have started getting a little funky shape, but they were good. I just had too many cucumbers. I got that, you see that row of Max Pack pickling cucumbers over there are just making so much, and it seems like a lot of our bag customers are really liking the pickling types over the slicing ones, and then we just had too many, and I was ready to turn over this plot, so I just ripped them up. And the one great thing about this Hortonova netting, which you can see here, is it makes it so easy to clean up after a crop of cucumbers. I've already got my T-posts out of the ground there. But you just cut the zip ties on those T-posts and you just pull up that netting. It pulls up the plants and just makes it so quick and easy to clean up. Now I've got a few weeds in here I'll have to come in here and take care of with a hoe or something, the wheel hoe or hand hoe. But man, it just makes it really easy and fast to turn over a crop with that netting there. We just rip it all up. I'll roll it up like you see here. I'll wait on some of that plant debris to kind of deteriorate, lose some water so it's not so heavy, and then I'll take it over there to the burn pile behind that pecan tree. Now, just because we're getting rid of those squash and cucumbers doesn't mean we're done with squash and cucumbers. So we've got those Max Pack cucumbers there that, like I said, are just producing like crazy. And then we showed you us planting these squash here a few videos ago. So we've got a row of Pascola zucchini there. We've got some Slick Pig and some Gold Star here. And over on this row to the right, we've got those round zucchinis. The 8-ball, the 1-ball, and the cue ball. And I thin these out to about every 2 feet. They're looking good. Need to get in here and weed these guys. A lot of weeds popped up after old Cristobal came through here. But these squash should start making probably the next 2 weeks. They've been growing really fast, and we should start seeing flowers soon. So we got squash in the refrigerator that'll keep for a week or so. we get those others out of the way, and just as soon as we run out of those others, these here should start producing. So hopefully we timed it just about right. So now back to the crop removal or crop debris discussion. So when you're ready to turn over a crop, ready to turn over a plot, you've got all this, you know, all these plants in there that you want to get rid of. You've got kind of three options. You can, one, just incorporate them into the soil, till them into the soil, throw a tarp on them, let them decay that way. So option one is to leave them there. Number two would be to compost them, so to remove them, then put them in your compost pile, use them to create some good, nice compost that you can use later on. Great sustainable way to do it there. And number three is to just get rid of them altogether. Throw them in the trash, or as we like to do, put them in our burn pile. Now, depending on what crop or crop family you're talking about, your choices of those three options might be a little different, and for us it certainly is. So there are some crops that I like to just till into the soil. Seems to help add organic matter, and you know, it's really easy to do that. There are other crops like these squash here where I want to get them as far away from the garden as possible. You see, we have a couple crop families down here in the south that give us the most insect and disease problems. Those being cucurbits, so your squash, cucumbers, winter squash, melons, anything like that, any of the cucurbits, and then any of the nightshades, potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant. Those two big families right there are our big bugaboos when it comes to insect pressure and disease pressure. And so the last thing I want to do is leave any of that crop debris in the garden. Now this can vary a little bit depending on your climate, but down here where we live, it doesn't get very cold. In the wintertime, it might hit 20 degrees 1 or 2 days. Some years doesn't even get that cold. So it doesn't get cold enough to kill any fungal spores or any insect eggs that we may leave in the soil here. And so what happens is those fungal spores and those insect eggs, those squash bug eggs, can overwinter in our soil. Then when it warms back up, boom, they're gone again, causing big problems for us. So the more crop debris we can get out of here, the more of those insect eggs and fungal spores we can get out of here, and we don't have to worry about them becoming a bigger problem in future years. Now, if you live somewhere where it gets really, really cold, it's going to get cold enough to kill those, and it's not, you know, that big of an issue. You don't have to be as careful as we do about our crop debris, especially with cucurbits and nightshades. Now at this point you might be saying, Trav, well, what about option number two? What about composting? You got that big compost bin behind you there. Why don't you just compost them? So now's a good time to talk about composting and why we don't compost. You can see my little bin here, and this is some compost I buy, some gin trash compost, and it's good stuff. And the reason we don't make our own compost is simply because we use too much. It would take me a much bigger space than this right here, which that little pad there is probably 12 by 12. It would take me a much bigger space than that to get in there and turn tons and tons of compost, which I've been using this spring. So we use too much to make our own. We wouldn't have enough organic material to make that much compost. So we just buy our compost. And that gin trash at $18 a ton is just so cheap. Even if I could or did have the means to make my own compost, not sure it'd be worth my time to do so when I can buy really good compost at $18 a ton. The other thing is in a home garden situation, it is difficult to get compost hot enough to kill those insect eggs and kill those fungal spores I was talking about. You need to be wetting that compost regularly, turn it, making sure it got real hot. And it can be done, but it's not as easy to do in a home garden situation as it is if you've got some of this commercial grade compost equipment. So if you are going to compost this stuff, check your temperature on your compost pile, do a little research, and make sure you can get it hot enough to kill those eggs and those spores so that you're not adding those back to your garden next year when you're amending your soil. So for those reasons, because we don't do our own composting And mainly, secondly, because it just doesn't get cold down here. That's why we choose to burn this stuff right here. Those cucurbits and those nightshades are getting away from the garden. They're going to the burn pile. They're getting burned where we don't have to worry about any of those issues carrying over to our garden plots the following years. Now let's talk about something I would till in the soil, which would be a lot of greens, mustard greens, any of my mixed greens beds, anything that would incorporate really easy into the soil, things I don't have a lot of disease issues with. I don't have any problem going in and tilling those in. Corn stalks are another thing. We'll just till those in the soil. And it may differ for you depending on what your disease pressure is. Some people have really bad disease issues with brassicas like broccoli and stuff. And so you might not want to till those into the soil. So just kind of keep an eye on your garden. And if it's a crop you have some really bad disease issues with, get that stuff out of there. Don't leave it there and add to problems for future years. Well, I was just about to talk about my burn pile, but then rain cloud, all of a sudden a little storm popped up, so we'll have to finish the rest of this in the truck. But what I was going to say is, if you don't have a burn pile, if you live in the city and can't burn crop debris, you know, you could always just put it outside for the trash pickup. If you do live in a rural area in the country, I'd highly recommend having a little burn pile. It makes it really easy to get rid of some of this crop debris. So tell me in the comments below, what do you do with crop debris? What's the plan on your garden or your homestead? You like option number one, just incorporating it all in the soil, just tilling it all back in? Maybe you like option number two, composting it? Or maybe option number three, just, you know, getting rid of it and burning it. And maybe you do a combination of those three, you know, kind of like we do here. We do a lot of number one and number three. So tell me what you like to do for your farm, and maybe kind of what crops are your bugaboos that you really need to just get out of there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give me a big thumbs up. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and hit that bell button down below so you get notified every time we come out with a new video. And check out these other two videos right here, ones we've did in the past on crop removal, crop turnover, all those good topics there. We'll see you guys next time.